Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my dear student. How are you today? Most of you are not here today, but I feel deem it so important for me to record this lesson for you. And this lesson is based on the question paper that was done last year. It was test 2, June 2025. Before I begin, I would like to dedicate this period, make a short prayer to God for being able to be here today. We thank Him for everything. Without Him, without His grace, we won't be able to be here. And we humbly ask Him to give us His wisdom so that we can be able to understand what we are going to learn today. So, like I said, this is based on the June question paper last year. So I'm going to talk through the slides and present answers to some of the questions here, if not all. If time will permit, I'm going to uh, answer the whole questions, discuss the relevant answers to the questions or the appropriate answers to the various questions asked here, if you will. So the first question is a multiple choice questions. So ordinarily, these are simple stuff that you can easily provide answers to, you can easily walk through. The first question says, project costs are finalized using the dash dash dash. You call it I call it dash dash dash. To fill in the blank space, we're all talking the same thing. So you have four options here. A, estimate. B, quotation. C, invoices. D, the budget. So the correct answer here is estimate, which is A. Okay. Now, question 1.2. It says the from activity must finish before the to activity can start. So here we are talking in terms of dependencies of activities in a project, whereby you need to finish the preceding activity before the succeeding activity. The one that you need to finish, we call it preceding, that is before. Then the one that needs to ensue after that is what we call succeeding. So it's a kind of relationship, task relationship, or activities relationship, if you will, in project management. So now let's see which is the correct answer here. The from activity must finish before the to activity can start, which means is a finish to start dependency. I don't want to waste much time on this. You have finish to finish dependency, finish to start dependency, start to finish dependency, start to start dependency. So the correct answer here is finish to start dependency. Now, question 1.3. An item that is produced as a result of a project activity is what we call deliverables. It's not work breakdown structure. You know what breakdown structure is? The hierarchical representation of the various tasks that needs to be done in a project, right? Whereby decomposition have taken place. Decomposition is about breaking down the tasks that needs to be done in a project into manageable packages. So those tasks are being arranged in form of a hierarchical order. to form what we call a breakdown structure. When we say structure, it means a framework, right? Now, it's not organizational structure, neither is it hierarchical. So the correct answer there is deliverable. Okay, right. Let's go. Then the fourth question, being 1.4, says a point of reference indicating progress of the project. What is it called? It's called milestone. Milestone, by virtue of its conceptualization in the project management, it's a point in time in a project where you feel that something has been achieved. So, by virtue of that question, the correct answer is milestone. It's not decomposition. I've explained to you what we mean by decomposition. It's neither word breakdown structure nor task list. It's not a task list. Right. So the correct answer there is milestone. Right. Now, question 1.5. Dash or as you may like to call it, is not a project. Which one of these options can you say identify as a non-project? The first one, which is A, it says an ongoing operational support activity to improve oral availability at TVET colleges. Then the second one, B, vaccinating all South Africans against COVID-19. Then C, hosting students from states, USA, as we like to call it. Then D is research a cure for monkeypox. Right. So when you look at the various options, research a cure for monkeypox is a research project. Oh, yeah, it's a project on its own, which could be research and development, right? Could be classified as research and development in a project. Hosting students from USA is an event, of course. By virtue of being an event, it's a project. Then vaccinating all South Africans against COVID-19 is a COVID as well. So the most appropriate answer here is an ongoing operational support activity to improve water availability at TVET colleges. It's an ongoing. So when you reflect your mind back to the differences between a project and a non-project, we say a non-project is something that is ongoing. Could be an activity that is ongoing or task that is ongoing without a definite time frame, without a definite budget. So, yeah, we advise you to look at the characteristics of a project, right? And try to compare it with that of a non-project. Or you can possibly look at the difference between a project and a non-project. So you can read that one off. Then question 1.6, it says projects where houses are built for the poor and sport development program are called dash projects. So when you look at the various options, you have A, technical, B, business, C, development, D, community. Right. Development project. Right. Now, 1.7. Dash is or stroke are used to monitor and control risk by comparing the progress of the project activity with trigger events. Right. So let me go back to question 1.6. When you look at the various options, right, you see development and community project, right? They looks much more that it seems to be appropriate as far as the answer of that question is concerned, right? But project houses are built sports for poor and sport development program. Okay, we pick development as one of the most appropriate or the most appropriate there. Then 1.7, you have various options. A, scheduled evaluation. B, quality management. C, risk monitoring. Then D, regular reviews. So the most appropriate option there is risk monitoring when we are talking about risk and the risk trigger, right? Then 1.8, you have dash cannot be controlled by the parties to a contract and prevent the parties from complying with the contract. So in project documentation or in project document as it relates to contract, there is a certain clause that is normally included in a contract document, which says, we seek to exonerate the obligation of the parties to the contract in case of event that could happen which may be beyond the control of the parties concerned or the parties thereof, if you like. So when you look at the various options here, it's not financial risk. You cannot, uh, the party to a contract in a project environment cannot exonerate themselves or take advantage of financial risk to exonerate themselves from any obligation. So if there is a problem pertaining to financial risk, right? So you cannot exonerate yourself from being, if you are a party to a project and you fail to execute or you fail to do what you're supposed to do as an obligation, the project in fulfilling your obligation, sorry to say, in fulfilling your obligation in the contract, and if it is due to your mismanagement of your fund and is constituting a kind of financial risk to you or in the project, you cannot use that one there is no excuse that can be made. Contractual use is not appropriate here. Operational risk, for example, the machine breaking down or you don't service your machine, you cannot take advantage of that. You say, oh, why I couldn't deliver is because my machines were not serviced, my equipment were not serviced, or I couldn't been able to employ the right skill or the people that are qualified, have got the skill and knowledge to do the work. That is why uh, you cannot be able to deliver. So you cannot take advantage of that. So the best one here, or the best fit option is force majeure. Force majeure, in other words, we used to call it act of God, something that is beyond the control of both parties. So the best answer here is B. B is force majeure, right? Cannot be controlled by the parties to a contract and prevent the party from complying with the contract. Then you have 1.9, project dash is the final stage in a project life cycle. What is the final stage? The final stage is the close out. So a project starts from the initiation stage, right? I'm going to give you a brief rundown of the different phases in a project, from the initiation, planning, monitoring. From the initiation, then you have the planning, then you have the execution, the monitoring, and the closure. So invariably, we have 5 phases. I repeat, it's very important that you know the phases. Initiation, in other words, you can call it the inception. The Americans, they call it inception, right? Then after the initiation, you have the planning stage, right? Then after the planning stage, what next? You need to execute. Whatever you planned needs to be actionalized, needs to be actualized. So from the planning, you've got the execution. In American terms, the execution, they call it implementation. So both concepts means the same. Then from when during the process of the execution now you need to introduce another mechanism or another phase which is sandwiched between the uh, execution and the closure. We call it monitoring. Monitoring, right? You need to monitor. Then the last stage is the closure stage, right? Monitoring and evaluation. Then the 10th one is, let's see what the question says. The dash ensures that the project is adjusted if changes becomes necessary. So here we got different options. First one, A, project plan, right? Project scope statement, scope change control, right? Project charter. So the question says, it does ensure that the project is adjusted if changes becomes necessary, right? We're talking about scope change control, right? Now, question two. Question two is very straightforward. Either you say true or false. Then you'll read the sentence and see if the answer to the question is true or false. Then let's see. Question two, indicate whether the following statements are true or false. Choose the answer and write only true or false next to the question number 2.1 to 2.10 in the answer book. Right. Now, the first one says norms and rules are regulation taught from birth on how to behave, which is true because we learn norms and rules from our childhood, right? What has be, become a usual practice in a certain community eventually develop into norms and values, right? By virtue of that, we can say that this question or the answer to this question is true. Then 2.2, there are two parties involved in the process of communication. That is communicator and recipient, which is true. Communication is made, right? It originates from the communicator. It has to be received somewhere with by the recipient, right? So you have the communicator and the recipient. 2.3. If the project is going to take longer to complete than uh, yeah, planned the project, manager must know as soon as possible. Obviously, same thing. The answer to that is true. Question number 2.2, if I have not given the answer yet, is the correct answer is true. Then 2.4, taxi strike is regarded as an example of an internal constraint. It's not an internal constraint, it's external. So internal constraints happens within the periphery or within the business environment, not external. So we can say, or can correctly say, that the answer to 2.4 is false. Now, question 2.5. When project manager assign task to a team member, so the details of the task must be communicated to the team members. Obviously, that is correct. Right. When a task is being assigned to a team member, it is the responsibility of the project manager to make sure that the task is articulately defined and well explained to the stakeholders or to the team members. Right. 2.6. A backup is storing data at different locations from where it is worked on. Okay. When you look at question 2.6, a backup is necessary for one to be able to store data at a different location in case of emergency so that one will always have something to rely on. So the answer to this question is true. Right. Now, 2.7, what does it say? Quality needs to be managed in order to ensure that the customer is satisfied with the product or services, which is obvious. Quality don't not just get itself done or get itself being of good quality. Something has to be done in order to ensure that the quality of a product or service is enhanced. So, what is the correct answer there? We can say the correct answer there is true. Then, 2.8, weekly reports between team leaders and project manager is done on a monthly basis. You see, the answer to this question is false, it's wrong. Because if we say weekly, weekly report, we're not talking about monthly report or something that is done daily. It should be weekly. So the correct answer there is wrong. It's false. Then 2.9, the team leader and the project manager must update their record before reporting on progress, right? Of course, progress report should be an updated report, not something that is outdated. So, by virtue of that, we can say here confidently that the answer is true. Records needs to be updated before making a progress report to whosoever that we need to make the report to or submit the report to, if you will. Then the last one here is this. If the solution has budget or time implication, the project, no, I take that again. If the solution has budget or time implication, the budget or timeline might need to be adjusted. Yeah, it has to be adjusted, right? Because if need be, it has to be because we have what we call the triangular constraints, where we have time, we have the budget, and the quality. So each of these constraints tends to have a kind of symbiosis relationship, or what I would call it impacts on each other. So if one is prolonged, for example, if the time if the time of a project is being prolonged, obviously it's going to affect the budget as well, in the sense that more resources needs to be expended to complete the project. So, by virtue of my explanation, we can confidently say that the answer to this question is true. Okay, so that is the end of session A, which is 20 marks. Now, this is section B, which is a case study. Okay, let's see. Let's read the case study. The case study, it said, read through the following project case study and answer the questions which follow. Okay. Set to open, what is this? It's like something is being omitted here. Okay, let's read the bullet points. Set to open in 2027 for domestic and international flights. The expanded Cape One Airport on the outskirts of Durban will forever change the landscape of the Cape One lines. Uh, a 7 billion rand investment in the area. The current airport facilities will entirely upgraded to be classified as Code F airport that specifies the requirement of facilities for the landing and takeoff of the largest passenger airline such as the Airbus A380. Then air traffic figures are projected at 1.7 million passengers per annum on the day it opens, growing to 2 million by 2030, 3.8 million by 2040, and 5.2 million in 2050. So take 25% of the total market of Cape Town International Airport. Right. Then we continue. The expansion program includes a rail line 3.5-kilometer runway with all associated airside infrastructure, a new boutique terminal building, cargo facilities and fuel storage amenities, and future commercial development plan will include offices and hotels. Speaking at a media briefing at the airport this morning, Managing Director of Holding Companies and Private Developer RSA, Eronique Ferguson, said the project has been years in the making. We bought the existing airport in 2020 and have been working on the project since then to understand the product that is needed for Cape Town in terms of aviation transport. So that is the case study, right? So when you come across a question like this, you need to take your time to read and digest the case study. You need to comprehend this case study so that you can be able to answer the associated questions, right? If it means reading it over and over again, you can do so. You are permitted to do so as long as, and no matter what, you need to make sure that you understand it. Otherwise, you will not be able to answer the associated questions or the questions that goes along with a case study. Then, now question three. The above mentioned project may be regarded as what type of project? It's a kind of development project, right? Kind of development project because it's bringing development to the community, to the area. An infrastructure project, any project that is infrastructurally based is a development project. So you can confidently say it's a development project, right? Then how much has been set aside for the above mentioned project? So when you look at the case study, you can easily pick that one. So the money that have been set aside, you can see the amount here. That is 7 billion, right? 7 billion rand have been set aside for the project. So what does it mean when we say set aside? That means the budget, the plan, yeah, you can call it budget if you will, right? The budget amount for the project And you can as well call it the planned cost of the project. So we're talking the same thing. Then identify three stakeholders mentioned in the project and explain their roles. So all you need to do, you go back to the case studies and see the type of people, or rather the stakeholders that are involved. Obviously, you can even talk about the team members, the labor, the workers that are going to work there. What is their role? Their role is to make sure that they do what is required to be done, they carry out the task in order to complete the project successfully and to achieve the objectives of the project, the predetermined objectives of the project. Then you have, of course, you have the Ministry or Ministry of Transport and Aviation, right, which is going to be in charge of to make sure that whatever that is going to be done there is in line with the stipulated rules and regulations in terms of legal compliance. You know. Then the community that is there, the contractor that is going to uh, carry out the project, the sponsor, where the fund is coming from, all those things needs to be identified as stakeholders, their roles in terms of, for example, the sponsors being the one to provide finance for the project. All those things needs to be stated. So that is how to tackle this type of question. It's very easy, right? Then differentiate between the due date and the earliest possible date. That is 3.4. What is the difference between the due date and the earliest possible date? The due date is the date that has been set aside for the project to be completed normally, all things being equal, right? That is what we mean by the due date. Without any problem, without any hindrance, during the planning of the project, a due date was set by virtue of the schedule, right, that was drawn up. So that due date is the date at which the project is scheduled to be completed. Then the earliest possible date, perhaps if there could be uh, a technique of crashing, reducing the duration of the project. So it's the earliest time in which the project can be completed. That is what we mean by the earliest possible date. Earliest possible date always uh, earlier than the due date. It comes first before the due date, if I may put it like that, for more simply or for more clarification. Then you have, with that with question number 3.4. Now let's go to 3.5. For the deliverable to be accepted by client, quality control should take place. What must be included in quality control? Right. Quality control is a way of ensuring that the product and services to be delivered as far as this project is concerned is quality oriented, that can be able to meet the quality requirement of the stakeholders. Right. For example, the materials that needs to be employed or utilized in the project needs to be in good order, need to be quality assured. Right. The workers that are going to work there, they must be skilled, to be able to perform what they've been assigned to perform. Then we must make sure that all the materials, the assembly and of material that needs to be done needs to be quality proof, quality oriented. Needs to be we say when we say uh, quality should be something that is of good standard. Let me put it that way, right? Should be quality focused or quality ladder. Let me put it that way. Then as a project manager of the Durban, which delivery strategy will you use and why? So in project management, we got different types of delivery or delivery strategy, if you will. We got what we call one-shot delivery, whereby you complete the whole project and you make sure the project is completed holistically before you hand over the completed project to the beneficiary. We call that one shot, right? Then we got what we call phase delivery, whereby you have to be delivering the product of the project in phases. Then we got what we call interactive delivery strategy, whereby you need to rework on it. You've done a project, then you deliver it, then you allow the beneficiaries to make use, or the customers, the client, depends on the type of project. For example, if it's a software project, you allow users to make use of the product and provide you comments in terms of how you can be able, or in terms of provide you comments on how to improve on the product. So we call that one interactive. So here you can either use one-shot delivery or interactive delivery, right? Then what is important here is that whatever delivery that you advance here, you need to buttress that reason with reasons, with explanation in terms of why you prefer that type of strategy to be employed in this type of project, right? So you need to provide explanation. Then we said 3.7, mention 6 steps of problem solving processes, right? For you to be able to solve a problem, right, you must first of all identify what the problem is. You must define what the problem is. Because in the first place, if you don't know uh, explicitly what the problem is, if you don't define the problem very well, you will not be able to provide solutions to it. So, in other words, you must have a proper diagnostic of what the problem is. It's like a doctor. If a doctor doesn't have a proper diagnostic of what the ailment or disease is for a patient, there is no way the doctor will be able to prescribe the right medication or be able to cure or provide cure to that sickness. So, in the same vein, in a project environment, for you to be able to solve a problem or put a problem to a rest or to a perfect rest in peace. So, you must be able to, first of all, define what the problem is, right? Having defined what the problem is, you need to formulate options, several options on how to address that problem. Then, based on the options that you've advanced, then you need to uh, do a kind of analysis in terms of looking for the best option that can be able to solve the problems. Then after you apply the options, then having applied the option, you still need to come back and evaluate, to review, to see whether the options have worked, all those type of stuff. So those are the things that we are talking about in terms of in answering this question, 3.7, mission system of a problem solving process. Right. Now, we've done with that question number 3.7. Then the other one is 3.8. As a project manager, what do you think will happen if quality is not managed? It's a very simple question that one can answer, even if you haven't been a student or a participant in a project management class. You can be able to answer this, right? From your general knowledge. If quality is not managed in whatever endeavors or initiative that you are working on. What is going to happen? Obviously, we know that the end product is going to be compromised. The client, the customers, the stakeholders, right? Let's use the word stakeholders this time around. The stakeholders, they won't be happy. And once the stakeholders, they become dissolution, at the end of the day, that project will not be regarded as a successful project. And if for if that kind of situation happens, you know, you as a project manager that have been commissioned to manage that project, and it can even result to a situation that you're gonna find it difficult to be engaged, to do another project. So there are a lot of things we can talk about. There are a lot of consequential effects that we can talk about. A lot of implications that one could talk about in a project that is not properly managed in terms of, or in a project where the quality is not properly managed, right? It can even result to people getting injured, accident and whatever. So at the end of the day, obviously, like I said, it's going to compromise the quality of the deliverables, or rather the product of the project, if you will. Right. Now, we've finished with that. The next one is delegation. Delegation is an important process that can be used to share responsibility. Okay, let me take that again. Delegation is an important process that can be used to share responsibilities with or when organizing the Durbanville project. Of course, delegation is a buzzword in a project environment. Remember, a project is always being constituted with people, stakeholders, you got team members. Obviously, your project manager cannot be able to do alone this kind of project. People need to work with the project manager. Of course, a project of 7 billion, it's a big project. It's huge, it's gigantic, right? When you look at how this project is going to be done, it's going to involve a lot of people. It's going to involve a lot of schools, a lot of expertise, a lot of professionals from different fields. So the activities or the task that needs to be performed by all these people needs to be coordinated, right? Only one person cannot do everything. So powers, authorities, responsibilities needs to be assigned. So, by the way, let me try to conceptualize or to explain to you what we mean by delegation. Delegation is a process whereby project manager or the boss assign tasks and responsibilities to the subordinate or to the project team members, right? For example, remember when we were uh, doing the organizational structure, whereby you have perhaps the project manager at the apex, right? Then you have below the project manager, you have perhaps the team leader. Then below the team leader, you have the team member. You see, it's a kind of a structure, it's hierarchical, right? It depicts the line of authority and responsibility, whereby the project manager gives directives to the project leader. Then the project leader needs to cascade it down to the team members. So the team members they got the responsibility to report to the team leader. Then the team leader have to report to the project manager. That is what we call a downward communication upward communication as well as lateral communication, which is horizontal. For example, when the project manager is providing directives or giving directives to the team leader, from the team leaders to the team members, we call it downward communication. So whenever the team member is reporting to the team leader as well as to the team leader reporting to the project manager. We call that one upward communication. Then which one do we call lateral? Peers to peers, right? From the team leader or the project, yeah, team leader. Of course, in a gigantic, in a big project of this nature, you will not only have one team leader, but various team leaders. So whereby they have to cross-fertilize ideas among themselves, peers to peers. That one is what we call lateral or horizontal communication, which means, to say it more simply, the communication between the team leaders on the same level, right? If it is a team member to team members, it's still the same. You can as well classify it as a horizontal, right? As long as it's on the same level. Communication on the same level among team members or could be. Depends on how the project is structured. You might have different project managers, right? For example, a program whereby the project managers needs to liaise among themselves on the same level, peers to peers, right? Now, the question here is mention the four steps of delegation. So the first one is to identify first what needs to be done. Because before you start assigning tasks and responsibility, you need to define articulately, clearly what the task needs to be. So first step, you identify the task, right? Then the first one, having identified the task, then you need to assign responsibilities, right? Having assigned responsibility, then you have to as well assign authority. Because when you assign only responsibility without an authority, then the subordinate will not have the power to act on your behalf. So it's always good for you to empower the team members so that they can be able to act on your behalf, so that they can be able to take the project as their own and be feel part, being valued or feel being valued as part of the project team. You need to assign authority as well, right? So the last one you need to assign, again, it's not a matter of, it's not assignment this time around. You need to create accountability, right? Creating an accountability is in a way that they have to know that they are obligated to carry out such tasks. And failure to do that, they can be held liable. That is where that element of accountability comes in. Let me give you a brief rundown of what I've just explained. First of all, you need to define the task, right? The task and activities that needs to be delegated, that needs to be assigned. Then the second one is assign responsibilities, right? Then the third one is assign authority. Then the fourth one is create accountability. Right. So that is how to do justice to the last question. Is it the last question? Okay. No, not the last question. The last question is mention one solution for the constraints mentioned in 4.5. Right. Well, mention for, okay. Have we talked about it? Okay. We were, let me see, where were we? Okay, we still have a lot of questions here. We haven't even gone to the last. Okay, now we need to move further. We still have some other questions here. Okay, differentiate between the concept stakeholder assumption and stakeholders' expectations. Assumption, by virtue of many of assumptions, what you think is going to happen, which might be true or it might be wrong. That is what we mean by assumption. Then expectations is what the stakeholders are hoping for to experience or for them to receive as a result from the project, or when as a recipient, what they are expecting to receive or to get as a result of the project. That is what we mean by expectation. Okay, 4.2. Project manager will use the scope statement to make decisions regarding the progress of the project. Mention 6 items that could be included in the scope statement, right? So the scope statement needs to contain what needs to be done, right? It needs to contain the activities that needs to be done in the project. It needs to contain the budget. It needs to contain the time frame, and it needs to contain the stakeholders, right? And it needs to have as well the schedule of the project, the timeline, the work breakdown structure. So the Gantt chart, all those things needs to be included in the scope statement. So yes, now 4.3, the project manager of the above mentioned project must have leadership skills, name and explain 5 skills. So for the project manager to be able to lead the team members and other stakeholders involved, there are certain traits or characteristics, there are certain uh, traits that the project manager needs to possess as far as leadership skill is concerned. For example, the project manager needs to be positive. The project manager needs to be a risk taker. The project manager needs to be a man of integrity. The project manager needs to be somebody should have, let me put it this way, should be visionary, should be a visionary leader. And the project manager needs to be someone that can motivate, that can influence other people to do what ordinarily they wouldn't be able to do on their own. The project manager should be a good mentor. Those are some of the traits that are being required for a project manager in order for such project manager to be able to execute his or her leadership role in the project environment. Then schedule is a tool that specifies the tasks that have to be done, right? Name 6 purpose of scheduling activities. So when we are talking about scheduling, here specifically we're talking about, for example, Gantt chart, right? So if you don't know what needs to be done when the task that needs to be done in the project, you don't know when it's going to start and when it's going to end. It becomes a nightmare. It's like somebody in an ocean or in the midst of an ocean without a compass. You wouldn't even know where to go. So you need to have a schedule. We detail out when the project needs to start and when the project needs to end. It shows what needs to be done. It shows uh, who needs to do what, and yeah. So the people that are responsible for uh, carrying out the works needs to be included as well. The resources that needs to be expended in the project needs to be included in the Gantt chart as well, right? So it helps you as well to monitor, right? In terms of monitoring the progress of work done, and it can also help you in cost control, cost planning, and cost control. So there are a lot of benefits in uh, utilizing a well-articulated Gantt chart or scheduling tools in the project environment, if you will. Then 4.5, every project has its own constraints, be it internal or external. Mention 4 constraints that can affect project negatively and explain how will they impact on the project. For example, we can talk about in terms of the cost, right? If the cost of the project happens to escalate more than necessary, obviously at the end of the day, the project, when you look at the cost of the project or the planned cost of the project, it seems to be unrealistic, and that could compromise the continuity of the project. Then you can look at operational uh, constraints, right? For example, if there are no people that are skilled or competent enough to do the job that is required, for example, this is kind of an airport. It means there are certain tasks there that require well skillful technical know-how, require people that know how to do what is required technically in terms of the requirement of the project. So if those people are not readily available, it can constitute a kind of constraint to the project, right? So these are some of the constraints that we are talking about. Right? You can look at the budget constraint as well and the quality on its own. So those things are some of the things that are required. I'm going to provide you uh, detailed answers to some of these questions. Might be you might not be able to understand what I'm saying now, but I will send you a detailed explanation of what I'm trying to put across here. Then mention one solution for the constraint mentioned. So whatever constraints that you mentioned in question 4.5, then you need to advance a possible way of solving such constraint or how to navigate that constraints and make it something that will not adversely affect the project, right? So if it is cost constraint, in short, you can as well look at constraints as in form of a risk, right? For example, you have to look at the risk that could, events that could happen to the project, and when such event happens, are likely to constitute a kind of a jeopardy or in a way that could compromise the project in achieving its objectives or purpose. So from there, then you prefer solutions to such constraints or such identified constraints. So essentially, that is the end of paper of session B, which is 80 marks. Then session A, 20 marks. So 20 plus 80, 100 marks. So that is how it is. It's a lengthy process, and I hope this will go a long way in assisting you preparing for your test 2 exam 2026. So I'm gonna stop here so far, so good, and I wish you what you wish yourself. Thank you.